Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody. It's a very interesting topic, hyperlocal, and I think it's changing all the time. I think actually Charlie and the Brixton Pound is, and everyone who's been thinking the Brixton projects as sort of a newer face of part of that, of trying to make communities work. What is a community? How you keep things in the communities is I think a big part of what people are now talking about in terms of hyperlocal and its benefits and its things that aren't so good either. So today I thought it'd be interesting. It's a bit more of a sketchbook of thoughts, some of which we've put into practice. Some things um, became better than we thought through our experience of almost, if one is able to practice hyperlocal design. That was very much our approach when we fell in love with the department store. We three out of the four partners here at Squire Partners all live South London, have always kind of semi-lived, worked and played in and around Brixton, never really thought about working in Brixton. And actually by combining those loves, we started to really understand the benefits of hyper local living. I've started to just overlap some of the philosophies that have sort of more recent conversations that have been in the press, things that we've spoken about as well in terms of post-COVID, new ways of energizing our cities that overlap hugely with what the Brixton Pound is standing for, which is the 15-minute city. I'm going to overlap a little bit of that with, I think a 30-minute city is a little bit better. There's a bit of a conversation piece. There's and then really all the things we've learned with those theories, and designing the department store studios pre and kind of post what we've learned in this building, but new ways of working, and just about to launch it. Well, it's launched, but it's going to be opening in about a month's time. That's the kind of format. So it's really a little bit of a conversation about those three areas. So I'm going to share my screen and just turn this into full the picture, and we can go back and talk to any of these points. But it's so the first part's a bit of a little bit of a retrospective to start with. So here we are. We're in the Bon Marché. We're the first department store in the country, kind of taken on board from the one in Paris. And this was the furniture and furnishing buildings. The whole idea, having a department store, having shop windows, wasn't what we were looking for. We were looking for twice as much space to be more creative. We weren't thinking, like many other businesses, of agile working as being a way to be really scrimping and saving on design space, creative space, workspace. We were looking for twice as much space. That made us look further afield than the centre of town. We were already in King's Cross, having moved from South Kensington on the same mission about 10, 12 years beforehand. This was 3 times as much space as we were looking for. So we had to think even beyond our own way of doing business. As I just touched on, really, the beauty of Brixton is, I mean, it's rich in so many different ways, but putting it very simplistically, its kind of current state is an immediate, vibrant, exciting, active location that stands on its own 2 feet, not really known as a place of work, but known for every other kind of aspect. Its history is slightly more unknown in the wider field, but the deeper we scraped into the history, the very facts that people love when they do learn them. First Electric Street, first Marks and Spencer's, first department store, many firsts, but probably built actually out of almost an early stockbroker belt, a very high quality level of building, built around new transport nodes, and those are the things that helped it boom. But then over the years, the existing building that we found was very much neglected. It had a little bit of bomb damage, but basically years and years of neglect. Brixton as a place, and I think anywhere that's hyper local, if we're talking about that, it's really about what is local, what can be built upon, and the hyperlocal idea is really about having building upon the facilities that are there, I suppose, making sure the facilities that are missing, you start filling those in, but you can, in a local area, however big that is, that's something we'll talk about in a bit. You can, all aspects of life are being nourished, and these hyperlocal areas can then feed off each other. There's all sorts of benefits of this, which means obviously the tighter you keep the locality, the less you are relying upon um, uh, cars, and even more so than public transport. You can start to ease that. You start to build up a community network. There's all sorts of benefits we can talk about as a group later. The Bon Marché, the department store, I mean, local to Bon Marché, then also Paris then becomes part of our locality, which is something that we drew upon here, as well as Tooting and this chap, James Smith, who bet on this horse, which immediately takes us to Newmarket, as part of our sort of cultural community that we have here. But this richness that built the building that we found, and the history becomes something that we are able to draw upon, that is completely true to place, when we're not, as designers, picking the latest trend out of Design magazine or somewhere else. We're drawing upon fact and historic layers that have been forgotten, and we can make part of the future, or reinvent, or overlap on top of. I think so. I wanted to just draw then upon this notion of what is local, and therefore what is therefore the right kind of hub and spoke, if there are such things, which are other things that get talked about now in terms of hyperlocal and the community you work within. Now, going back to 1745, Brixton was a place, and it was a very rural place. It was really in the advent of 1870 where, I think in particular what's quite telling was there were three railway stations. So this obviously precedes the tube by almost 100 years, but that created a critical mass, which is why we see such a great concentration of fine buildings, and a good level of density, and a good mix of uses that exist. Some still thriving today, some not. But in 1870, the place had already been generated. The critical mass was there. But going back to 1745, and if you zoom out on a map of London, it's a crossroads. It was already even a node of streets and roads that all came together. You can start to see that a little bit as we move on. This is about 1900. You can see the concentration of the stations, but in particular, you can see all the roads starting to converge, creating a sense of place. And around about exactly 1971, the Victoria Line was extended down to Brixton, which in itself then made it, and in particular the speed of Victoria Line, it's an incredibly accessible place, and we've got visitors who just can't believe the speed in which they can get to us from the very centre of what they think of town. From Oxford Circus, it's like less than 15 minutes. It's time travel. So when we conceive of time as a distance, you get some very interesting kind of facts that start to come out. So here's sort of Brixton, and we're all familiar with actually quite vibrant sub-communities, Clapham, Herne Hill, and wider network than that. Looking at those maps over a series of projects some of us have all done together, we sort of explored as part of London Festival of Architecture 2 years ago, which the subject was boundaries. Obviously in somewhere like Brixton, we've got quite some more difficult boundaries like postcode wars and those sort of things that go on. But if you can't afford to get on the tube, then obviously that link on the tube is nothing like as fast. Districts, whether you have street lights or not have street lights, mean certain districts become don't really feel part of your local neighborhood. And we all started to map that together on this interactive map. We set this off just by adding less obvious boundaries that are real boundaries. In particular, we've got things like ward boundaries and what your ward councillor will support. You've got borough boundaries, which are really quite strong boundaries these days in London. Bus routes, again, if you're not jumping on the tube all the time, the bus journeys and those that network is really quite important. So it's interesting with this new conversation of hyperlocal, the conversation of routes, boundaries, borders, and flow in and out is really is a really interesting fact to take into account, as well as cultural hotspots, markets, shops, and parks as well, which we've all learned to love in a whole other level. Now, in terms of what amenities a place has, I think this in the end will be the measure of what makes a good good hub, a good local point, a focus. And in some ways, in deciding what makes a good hyperlocal location, assessing the amenities available that support everyone's day-to-day life and how they feed off each other, measuring those will be important. And Brixton's rich in its markets, and it doesn't just have one, it has several, which is brilliant for getting sort of grassroots up. Independent stores, shops as well. Brixton's unbelievable for having international names, but as well as the highest density of independent shops. You're getting proper authentic merchandise and an opportunity for independents and new brands to make a mark. I don't think there's many places, maybe Camden perhaps is as close to Brixton in terms of this granular to international success opportunity, which I think in many startup businesses, being able to have these platforms for success, but being surrounded by the creativity is makes for a great location. It's the sort of thing you can't get in Oxford Circus, which makes somewhere like a hyperlocal location a more accessible and a more dynamic choice for people and businesses to live, work, play, and grow their businesses, or in fact, grow their music industry, their sort of music careers and everything else. The academy is on everyone's in the music business's path to success, as well as the come down from greatness. It's sort of a cultural icon. Got the brilliant Britzy. We've got the new Brixton House Theatre, Pop Brixton. These are kind of international symbols of great locations that are known globally, but equally they satisfy a local need. So I think Brixton is kind of extra rich it's probably one of the most successful hyperlocal locations, if we're talking that way, but it'll become a great aspiration for other sort of satellite towns, villages to see what makes things work and not work. Other amenities, we do not that many hotels, but there's hotels, libraries, the town hall itself, and we're starting to talk generally with Lambeth about it's brilliant they've come back and they brought the town hall alive. I know there's co-working involved with it in there, the civic ceremonies, and there's an opportunity for the town hall to give more back to the community, and that's something that can adapt and flow. Then also residential, and having the right range of places to live for a wide range of people is really important. And this is maybe where the 15-minute city struggles a bit, because I think in London we're lucky that it's not as concentric as many cities, in particular Paris, which we're probably going to talk about in a minute, where it's very much super rich in the middle and just poverty spreads out. And London is a series of spokes, a hub and spokes, and other little hubs and spokes from that already. Brixton being a major one of those to build upon. But even so, a lot has been said. It's difficult to find somewhere to afford to live in the centre of Brixton. We employ about 200 people, and there's a very few people live in Brixton, and if they do, they rent somewhere very small. No one in our organisation owns anything in Brixton, and this is something we hear about as a complaint. So how I'm interested in how we can widen up that that catchment area of what is actually termed as local. So Brixton Parks, again, a plethora. South London, we're extremely lucky to have such a network of open spaces. North London is a bit more dense, but once you move a little further north, there are open spaces that the spoke communities can enjoy, which you can't enjoy in the centre of town as much. So this is something I don't need to tell most of you about, but Brixton's incredibly rich in all this variety. So moving on to theories that are being quite well publicised at the moment. It's all based on the theory of Professor Carlos Moreno and the Paris mayor Anne Hidalgo. I don't know how to pronounce her surname, apologies. But they are very much embracing the 15-minute city, and this is something other cities are talking about. And I think in a sort of the post-pandemic dialogue is really about embracing this a little bit harder if we can, in terms of taking over the streets before they got taken back over by sort of 3 lanes of traffic. Let's take one back and use it as proper cycle lanes, rather than put all the money back into all the public transport, which is obviously a huge amount of investment. It doesn't cost as much to give up a bus lane and turn it into a cycle lane and reduce the amount of traffic and control the way other things happen. But even better is to reduce the amount of commute. And if you have all the facilities you need within 15 minutes, you've actually got a perfectly balanced society. So to learn, to work, share, reuse, supply, exercise, cultivate, engage, doctors, spend locally, eat well, circular economies. What's great is this is what Brixton kind of has already, and this is what other places are really trying to grapple with. Onto the 30-minute city, and I took part in a bit of a cultural exchange with South American architectural group representing nearly all the South American countries. They came to Europe and London on a sort of fact-finding mission, and we did some information sharing there. And there are lots of cities. We're very lucky in London and mostly around Europe, actually, that the cities have grown around very careful planning of sort of sewers and transport and communication networks. In South America, unfortunately, the cities have grown too fast, too quick, without planning, and poverty's pushed to the outskirts, and there's no easy flow of how people can get around. But some of the breakthroughs, sometimes it's done with cable cars, but actually by putting in like cycle networks next to railway tracks, with the 1 or 2 that are there, suddenly you get a much greater outreach. Similar, I think here, if we say, look, 15 minutes, I think you are a little bit too close to work, really. I think having a bit more of a mental break, a bit of a distance. I live in Wandsworth, and now I'm just moving into Wimbledon. I can cycle to here in 30 minutes, and that's actually a perfect regular exercise for me. It does mean I need a shower when I get here, but actually that journey is a really healthy journey I do every single day. We, in our consultation, when we did move to Brixton and spoke to everyone, no one really minded moving all the way from King's Cross to Brixton, because everyone was kind of quite nomadic anyway. It represents new opportunities. In fact, quite a lot of people live down South London anyhow. It's kind of the need of the less rich professional, if you like, as architects, and artists, we sort of work for love more than money, but we still need to live somewhere. We still need to survive. But so we kind of find the cracks to live in, like many people do around London. And if in 30 minutes, you can get a long way, in particular now with other things that are creeping in, such as the electric scooters. They're not quite recognized properly in London yet, but you've got the electric bikes, the lime green do the electric bikes. You've got the Santander bikes. Cycling's huge, and in that consultation, that was probably the thing that most people wanted them for us to provide the most, is make sure we did have cycle storage, cycle showering facilities, because then you can open up a much bigger network. That made us, we really did need to deliver proper showers and proper lockers, which is something we're very much is at the forefront of the department store studios and the forefront of nearly many of the schemes we're currently working on. The 30-minute rather than 15-minute gives you a wider, more varied network of people and communities and businesses to engage with. We support the local economy around us immediately, but plus a little bit further. 30 minutes gives a really good level of flexibility, a brilliant work-life balance. And as I said at the beginning, that mind space and that mental separation is really, really good. But then it also triggers more affordable living destinations. So if already you're building around a new hyperlocal sort of sub-hub, if you like, we're not Oxford Circus, we're in Brixton, and then that in itself is its own hub and spoke. We've got people living all over the place. I've just chosen Beckenham Junction as just one example where suddenly families who lived sort of Hackney and out towards sort of Barnet now have moved down and love and enjoy and still cycle in from places like Beckenham. So we just started to look at this map, if you like, and this is something we've been talking about with the Brixton Bid and Hermans, and mapping what's safe, what's not safe, where to go, how far you go. The 15 to 30 minute, sort of the 15 minutes, the darker circle, the 30 minutes is the lighter one, and we've just taken this off TfL information of where you can get to in 30 minutes, 15, 30 minutes. And what this shows and demonstrates is actually as a kind of headquarters destination for us as a international business, we've got an outreach. We can get to all of our major projects, all of our major clients in London within 15, 30 minutes. The network of Brixton's superb for that. I can get myself, still being a North Londoner from birth, my heart's with Arsenal, so I can still get to Finsbury Park in time for the match as long as the tube's running. Taking that on a little bit further onto a bus ride, the bus routes, I think it's like 9 major bus routes go through the centre of Brixton. Its outreach, depending on traffic, but actually it's incredibly good. Suddenly we've got this network of South Bank, Nunhead, Streatham, Wandsworth, Battersea, Clapham, Dulwich, Crystal Palace and Bermondsey. And what's quite nice is if Brixton is the major hub, there's a network and a relationship with those sub-hubs of communities that can feed off each other. And I think we already slightly see that with people we know and who kind of grow from Brixton. Moving that on to cycles and electric scooters, which I think was quite interesting now doing the cycling. Also, I think it's partly the mayor's thinking with the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit, the streets are getting a lot safer because cyclists, scooters and cars and buses, we're all traveling at basically the same speed. It's maybe fractionally slower on the bike and the scooter at 15 miles an hour, but we don't have to stop as often, and we get to the front of the traffic lights. This the ability to move around in a slightly wider locality quicker is good. Also bearing in mind with each one of these points, the outer nodes are offering places for people who are part of the daytime kind of life of Brixton. These are offering places for them to live, which are far more affordable. And then as such, they enrich those nodes because of what Brixton has to offer. Then moving into walking, and what's quite interesting is I think the area of the power walker, you can really, TfL again have slightly acknowledged this. There's a tube map they produce which Also shows the walking distance between stations on it, which is really good because, for us people who've benefited living in London for most of our lives, we learn the shortcuts and know when to get out and not to go all the way to Covent Garden. So it'll take you just as long to walk up and out of the station than it get out Leicester Square and ping across is quicker than going to the station itself. But the 15th, so they've got those shorthand routes, but where you can get to in walking distance. I think through the pandemic, again, lots of people have really realised just how far they can walk. We've got quite a few of our team live in sort of Putney and Battersea by the heliport, and they can walk to work in 45 minutes and actually enjoy. It's always 45 minutes. It's never being disrupted. You're never let down. It's good for you, and there's no sort of zero stress in many ways. So taking all that on, we've started to overlap those rings. So sort of an ongoing exercise. And I think what becomes quite interesting is when these rings you start mapping them around London and start seeing how other hyperlocal locations can start feeding off each other. I think in particular, Brixton, Peckham and Clapham have been resonating with each other quite a lot already at the moment. So looking back to what we wanted to achieve, that we did this drawing probably a year and a half before we moved in, and on the right is all the things we were loving and enjoying about Brixton and the wider locality and the people we met and the experiences we had. We already knew Eli Kishimoto, and through that, as soon as we bought the building, we with Binky and Charlie and many of you others, we helped one, utilize the canvas of our building, to kind of talk to everyone about what we should do, what the opportunities were with the department store, help the Brixton Design Trail and the London Design Week come alive, and all just really feed off each other. So by opening up the conversation and opening up by the other thing, which we didn't quite expect there's such a positive response to, was when we were saying we've got more space than we need. The regeneration team at Lambeth and many of you actually helped introduce people who were desperately looking for extra help. Some people were looking for space, some people who were looking for different things. And through conversations with all of those people, we managed to give a home to Volcano Coffee, who were in Norwood and were looking desperately for a place in a front face in Brixton, which was about as West End as they wanted to go. The post office were in the nose of our building, and although we could have closed them down like every other post office and moved them on, actually we realized what an asset that is, and we could design a really friendly post office. Pure Vinyl, we wanted to bring music into the building, and we were able to give them a home at no extra cost to what they're already paying, because we could give them a shallow shop front. We got Canova Hall in the base of the building, and we insisted that if at a reduced rent, you were not allowed to close during the day like many other nighttime economy venues. We insist. It's no good for us. It's no good for the daytime community. So all this life was we wanted to bring into the building. So through a series of the street galleries, the first one we did with really established artists, as well as schools and ourselves and the Brixton Pound and Eli Kishimoto, we created this interactive installment, and this took part all over Brixton. We then did it the following year in Stockwell Avenue, which was suffers from kind of disruptive behavior, but we're turning that into a positive energy, and that's lots of this creativity we're now feeding back into the department store studios, which now will replace well, it was actually effectively built on top of this base of the old department store that sat on this side. As we finished, we then created the building ourselves. We've got the space we sometimes need, we share with others a lot of the time. So we have an event space that we as an organization only really need on a Monday morning and a Wednesday lunch. Rather than designing something that then became sterile, we then realized that we could give something that we needed, but then for the rest of the week and all the other times, it could open up and do other things. So it does a series of cultural events, talks, crafty fox markets. There's another one coming in a couple of weeks' time. It's also a very good venue for art gallery shows. Some people do it for weddings. It's been fantastic success. Plus, we also have a reputation for now being, our Brixton's arms were open for us, and our arms are open to help people who need help. And so with Mark and Mokoko, they were cultural ambassadors for the windmill, and we were able to offer our design services there to help them and Lambeth get that going, and to kind of create energies beyond just ourselves to help the community. So this is just a snapshot of some of the activities we have in. This is sort of the state of the building as we found it, but we recognize that even in the graffiti years and the squatter years and the rave party years, there's some really positive pieces created, and we wanted to hang on to all those layers. Even though we cleaned up this window, we've actually created a rug that's inspired by the design of that. So all of that is embedding local talent and local effort. And then the existing materials, we listened sort of locally, if you like, to the amazing arts and crafts that were behind this building. Interesting, it's something that today we are interested in embracing the arts and crafts again. They've become more accessible, they become more rare. We want to enjoy them before they get lost in this sort of machine digital age. So we complemented the existing materials with new materials that were of the same family, pre-patinated and non-patinated coppers, enjoying the patina of the building, but then creating new patterns derived from the building, working with Eli Kishimoto and others, talking to people in Brixton Village and finding out that their husband is a sort of a part-time passionate furniture maker. Talking to Raphael here, then we commissioned him to create a piece which he chose to use out of the reclaimed materials of the building, inspired by the old pavement lights, and this sort of now sits in our reception. Here's some of the patterns that Eli Kishimoto got inspired by, that generate unique patterns for this building that then resonate throughout what we have here. So the locality is constantly feeding into the creativity, which beds everything in. And then we, of course, have more international and local partners that we could say that you can enjoy this as your own showcase. So this is sort of the ground floor. Most of you have been here, but the event space, bike stores, changing rooms, this is what needs really important if we're trying to get beyond a 15-minute locality to a 30-minute localities. The facilities are really important to enable that to happen. Carrying on these community events ties us into the local. Each year now we do the winter windows with the local school. We're on to about this year's coming up will be our 5th year of doing that, and we're doing a program for London Festival of Architecture with the school, so that widens up that local network and friendship. The upstairs area again was more than we needed just for ourselves. In fact, we wanted others involved. So here it's a nominal fee to be part of the membership up here, and there's a real sharing within this the community, the upstairs community and the Brixton community of enjoying this space and sharing and giving to each other. And we've got some great circulation spaces. This is sort of taste of our office and the meeting rooms, and just a snapshot of what we had and amplifying what's there. I mean, those floors, you believe this is just exactly the same floor that was there. This goes back to the quality of the materials that we used in Brixton. we can't even achieve those now. So mahogany and teak and things now we know not to be sustainable, but by reusing the materials that were already here, we could produce something extremely sustainable. Just reuse the same windows and fix things as we go. And this is a transformation. The ground floor was the thing that was really trashed in this building that we were able to restore and give back to the local community, which is very much enjoyed. So moving on to the department store studios. So previously, that street gallery you saw, that base of the building, is still is basically there. And then above that, there was like a 1950s extension that was not of a great quality. We've taken down, and we have put in a basement, and we've built 4 floors above, which is flexible workspace. We've evolved this and adapted it as we've spent time in Brixton and actually listening to how workspace trends are changing. We hope we've got this right, but we're aware we've got to stay nimble. But things that we've learned from the department store, which is obviously built as a shop but makes a fantastic office, things we've learned from the department store that we've put into this building, which is just building a really good quality building, is we've got extra high floor to ceilings. We've got a really nice, clear, express structure that's flexible. We've been really honest with the materials. So they're hand-laid bricks, and we've the lintels and mullions are load-bearing, and all the windows are openable. And we think this makes this resonate with the existing building, but it's just simply is this already a lovely building that sits, albeit contemporary, very comfortably with the existing building and into its context. At the ground floor, there will be a new, fully open to the public, unlike upstairs. Being on top of our building, it was impossible to make that, and it shares lift and everything with our offices, and it started life as being ancillary to the office. So it had to be a bit of a members bar. The ground floor will be a public bar and restaurant that will spill in and utilize the courtyard and enjoy the tree that we planted 4 years ago. It will be accessed off Stockwell Avenue, which will help bring activation that is already in place from Canova Hall and Fitness First that changed their entrance to face onto Stockwell Avenue as well. So this will be a little bit like a continuation of Canova Hall. The members' lounge will be an area that's a bit calmer, where there'll be a reduced access during the day, and it'll be for people who don't really want to have an office in Brixton. They don't really want to pay for a whole desk all the time, but you can work from home, or you could be working anywhere in the world or the West End. But this will be somewhere where you know everybody. You can come and sort of flexi work here, but you can get things printed. You can have informal meetings in this area, and you can book the meeting rooms upstairs. So it's a sort of an in-between area. Moving on from that, coming in this way, this will be the entrance to the studios off Belfield Road. And here there's a lift, but learning from our building, we've got a generous open staircase, encouraging everyone to keep healthy, meet, engage, and use the stairs with a natural window directly above it. And then there's a kind of really decent kitchen where there'll be a showcase of sort of Mediterranean foods. In the basement, we've got what we know to be essential. There is bikes, really good bike storage, really good showers for the studios. There's a screening room that we're hoping is going to be popular. It's something we feel like we will enjoy having, and a VR kind of suite as that starts to move on. But it's something that other people can book. We've got a lot of music and creative businesses in Brixton where having this sort of 16, 17 person private room to utilize would be good, but also we can do movie nights and things like that linked to the bar above. And these are the bar toilets. The rest is kind of just plant to run the buildings. So here's a snapshot of what's to come. We'll be opening in about a month's time. So this is the top left is the restaurant. and you're looking through to the members area, which is a bit behind. There's a bar area with high-level tables, and this is the members lounge, which at night, sort of 5 o'clock at night, it will switch across to also being part of the restaurant and bar, and then that's all spills into the courtyard, creating part of the sort of the community. Back with on the left here is our model making rooms. So the offer, what's different here? How have we responded? The sort of the hyper local offer is really, we've got a restaurant and bar that everyone can use, a courtyard that everyone can use. There are meeting rooms that outside people could book. There's a screening room that other people can use. The event space will be shared with the event space we already have, and there'll also be the connection back to upstairs as a sort of as an offer. On the first floor here, you can see the meeting rooms, and then there's a series of studios, a range of sizes, all of which will be fully serviced. This one will be the fixed desk area, and then there's a communal breakout lounge. And these are little phone booths that we sort of design into these kind of units. As I said, openable windows everywhere. The top floor also gets a terrace. The top floor, you're able to rent the whole floor. So we're trying to give everyone everything from someone who just wants to pop in and have another cafe to use, have the next step up, something a bit calmer. There's a virtual membership you can have, day pass, but then you can work up to the unlimited lounge, desk membership, and then have a private studio. So we're hoping this creates a really rich community. Obviously, there's with the original Bon Marché, there's cheaper studios to use as well, which will complement each other. So the amenities is all there. I think I've touched on most of those already. Other little quirky things like dog friendly and just trying to make it a little bit more homely. Its environmental credentials are extremely high, and trying to deliver a real office for today, sort of air quality, cleanliness, touch points, and then trying to promote the hyper local. There's a little matrix here of what each level of membership offers, but probably most of what's really important to us, a little bit like I was saying about Canova Hall, we want everyone who comes in to buy into skill sharing with each other, but also skill sharing in the wider Brixton community. And actually, we've already seen people who are interested to come in are very much wanting to be part of the wider community. And I think probably all of us as a group, like many did with us when we came, we should find a way of making sure that those who want to give have got somewhere to give and we can share, and everyone can benefit in the right way from each other, and not people operate in silos. Just to finish off, another layer we wanted to add is we have, well, it was intended to be one, but we ended up falling in love with two ideas. Is we have a residency offer that's I think Binky was part of the selection committee that will happen now each year. There is a desk or two that's available for local people to kind of pitch for, I suppose, and we take on board and give them free access, and then that starts them on their journey. So the two that we have selected is Gabriella and Coco, who've got some really exciting ideas. One is very much about textiles and kind of embracing, I suppose, that 30-minute city that I was talking about, and how do you, or maybe it's even she's into the 20-minute city, that you're somewhere in between. What do you wear in a sensible way on your bikes without feeling like it's all mammal men in their lycra, or it's unglamorous wear, but it's still practical cycling in, but you can wear it at work. So she's interested in that, which we found really engaging. And Gabriella's even more interesting, sort of looking sort of blockchains and turning those into sort of positive skill sharing programs based on that. So that's a sort of a very wide topic, but with a couple of case studies there. I'll hand back to you guys for any questions.
Great, thanks so
Thank you, Tim.
much.
Yeah,
That was super comprehensive. We have about 10 minutes left if anyone has any questions or thoughts. I'm also going to put a feedback form in the chat if anyone would like to fill that in. It'd be really helpful.
Anyone got any questions?
I'll ask a question to Tim, please. Tim, has your thinking had to change as a result of the new normal after the pandemic, in terms of, you know, the 15-minute, 30-minute, or even, you know, your own space that you've just shown us?
Yeah, I think no, it's a good question. It's one that's I think is being asked a lot by certainly our clients who we work a lot with more in central London, and they're very interested in, oh my goodness, I've got this massive building in Covent Garden and no one wants to get on the public transport. What do I do? So there we're doing massive cycle stores and a whole cycle spa. What we feel is actually this entire experience was really starting to make people realize just how much they love their locality, and that everyone's explored on foot and on bike their sort of little network around where they live. And then why not let that outreach take you to your nearest node? And wouldn't that make a better location to have your business than going all the way back into the West End again, just or the city? So it's where it's changed our thinking. So we felt like we were going in the right direction anyway. What we're waiting to see is we've seen a huge interest, more than we thought, in the fixed desks, because and they're being taken up by people who are slightly thinking in the cracks, if you like. They can't see the people they work for moving quick enough, but they know they don't want to be at home anymore, but they're prepared to have a desk away from home. We've seen a couple of the units, the studios that have gone already, have gone for people who were, the timing suited them, where their leases were coming to an end anyway, and so they own their own businesses, so they were already able to say, actually, I live in Dulwich, I don't need my office in Berkeley Square anymore, I much rather cycle to work and I'll come to Brixton, and then I can still be in Berkeley Square in 10 minutes. Where we're still waiting to see what happens a little bit is and I think we've got it right, where we might see, rather than people know they've definitely got 12 people coming into the office every day, they might say, look, I've got an office of 25, but can I have one of your studios for 12 people? And I'm not going to put any desks in it because they can do that work at home. I'm just going to have a big dining room table in the kitchen, because that it's about socializing. When we do come together, it's about socializing. So we're flexible enough for that to happen, but I think that's likely to happen. And if working from home does work for some aspects of people's lives, it can never do the socializing, and it can never do the creative touch points. And I think we're very rich in that. So our furniture offer, so our studios are actually just empty rooms at the moment. We're not buying all the desks because I think we would end up not needing all the desks. So it's changed it a little bit, but not much. We believe we're on the right tracks. We're prepared also with the way the space is. It's flexible. If we do need to create more fixed desks, we can. If we need to create more smaller units, we can, but we don't want to do that just yet.
Thank you.
I think it's very interesting what you're saying there, Tim, because I think you're right. It's about the socialization, you know, and people being able to work at home and kind of on their own, but then coming together to either brainstorm or do a project to get, you know, together, or even just to be, you know, social. So I think that's exactly the thing that we've as a team have discovered, it's very important that kind of balance between working at home and
Yeah.
having that access to do that.
Yeah, it's a little bit like, so our upstairs space is very much a social space. We
Yeah.
actually say to people, we don't want laptops and people working up there. It's meant to be, is a time to relax. Whereas down here, it will be more, a little bit more dynamic, certainly in the members area. We'll be encouraging people to dwell, because the cafes don't like it, because how do you stop someone basically having their cafe as an office for the price of one cappuccino? It's but it's nice, but then they take up all the seats. So we're hoping we've got enough variety here that there's a place for everybody, and most importantly, as a kind of community of people start talking and sharing and ideas, and you meet them, and I mean, like many of us have with each other, it's nice to go somewhere and you can talk and share and engage. And everyone who comes in here,
Exactly.
they're signing up to that principle.
That's really great. It was great news.
Good idea, yeah.
I think one of the things that I would pick up from as well on this is that in respect to the 15-minute cities, is having that familiarity with your community allows you to develop a better relationship with your neighbours, work colleagues, and it makes a more harmonious environment for everyone to live and work in. Because you see people regularly, and you have that kind of you have that connection. You have much more connection with the place than actually just going into work and coming out again and not knowing the street, the person that cleans the streets, even to the point to you dive in, you dive straight out again. So Charlie wants to
I've got a question. So there's so much to unpack in this. We need another 3 hours. So
we do.
We're going to have like a kind of in real life 3D session with lubrication involved. But I have a specific question. One of the things that really strikes me, and it comes from the hyperlocal thought, which has been couched a lot in terms of the sort of the post-COVID world that we live in.
Yep.
But obviously, the other thing about the 15-minute city and things like donut economics and things like that they are very much concerned with what we need to do collectively for the climate and that response. So on a kind of we hyperlocal takes us immediately into a much more sort of nebulous position. But as you were the first part of your presentation taking us through what you've done with the department store, for me was an absolute ringing endorsement of the beauty of refurb rather than rebuild. And
completely,
I'm interested in pursuing that. We haven't got enough time this afternoon, but I mean, we're speaking from what I would say is the architectural equal, if I could be so bold, of a wonderful building that you're in. It's just that most people think it's a bit of an eyesore. And I'm really interested in how we can work as a community to reimagine this kind of newer quarter from a different era of Brixton, to make that hyperlocal and bring it to life in the context of it being earmarked for demolition.
No, I completely agree. I think it's about proving the value, because it's easy to love. It's for our generations. It's easy to love these older buildings. So the one immediately after hated them and wanted to flatten it, and did and created the sort of modernist, what they thought was their modernist dream. But I think we're very lucky with the Rec and the International House that there's real integrity and craft that's in those buildings. A lot of the modernist ones were cheap, almost cheap copies of their pop idol originals. They were the cheap budget version, whereas actually International House and Brixton Rec is absolutely not. It's the Barbican of the South in many ways, isn't it? So it's we're lucky enough to be working on a project which is by Seaford. Now, some of his have been demolished. Others like Centrepoint have been listed, and the one we're working on is called Space House, has equally been listed. It suffers from some of the criticism people have of substandard workspace, which is low floor to ceilings, poor net to gross, cellular spaces. But actually, I think it's all of our jobs to prove actually that there's a value in those. I think it's great that International House got reused so quickly, and it's sort of 3-year program, and it's full. But it's a shame that it didn't get listed, whereas the Rec did, didn't it? And although they are
it was left, it was
specifically left out.
Was specifically left out, absolutely.
Which makes it even more difficult now, because it's but I think what's very good, for those of you who don't know the sort of the building world as we would, the GLA now have a very serious category of proving. You have to prove why you can't reuse what's already there first. I mean, yes, you could add floors to International House, and we could, the structure probably has the ability to take 3 or 4 extra floors, or maybe even more. Clients of ours did South Bank Place, South Bank Tower, and they added like 10 floors to 20 floors. I mean, there's you can work them hard, but I think showing the love and the beauty of the other part of Brixton, I think, is really important, as well as the sort of easy. We're quite an easy target in some ways, not necessarily an easy project, but it's reusing and what's already there is beautiful. And I think Brixton's rich in it and benefits, like we did with this building. If this building was even the main Bon Marché building suffered from being too much on the front row, and it's got heavily refurbished, we were just forgotten. And that's why we had so many good things to find.
Thanks.
But there are lots of bits that are lost in Brixton. We need to show the value of it before it gets thrown away.
I love the way you've repeated value several times, and it's not in the context of money, which is how these things seem to be. It seems to be the only way of judging value is through money. So I would love to pick up on that conversation with you at a later date, not least with the Brixton Pound kind of context as well, because
absolutely. Well, I think all the years of work you've put into Brixton Pound, now everyone's sort of thinking of these circular economies, and you've put it into practice. You've got your whole digital sides coming out now as well, isn't it? And how do we get, and we've got people signing up wanting to do it. That's now what we should be talking about, isn't it?
Brilliant. That's amazing.
Thank you so much, Tim. Definitely lots of food for thought there. I think we're gonna bring it to a close because it's just gone 5. But thanks so much to everyone for joining today.